Johnny here for Johnny's Car Care and Advice. So today what we're going to cover is we're going to figure out what kind of fuel economy we should expect from a 2021 Ford Bronco. So this new Bronco that's coming out, the issue that we have is no one's given any fuel economy numbers, and it's hard to decide to buy something without knowing, at least have a really good idea of what kind of fuel economy. Is this thing gonna use a lot more fuel than a Jeep Wrangler? Is it gonna use less? And we're gonna figure that out today. And how we're gonna figure that out actually isn't gonna be that difficult, because we currently already have the 2.7 liter EcoBoost engine in two Ford models. It's currently in the 2020 Ford Edge ST. But the problem there is it's connected to an 8-speed transmission. And well, the Bronco is going to have a 10-speed transmission. The weight of an Edge is actually quite similar to the weight of a Bronco. So you know what? That would have been a perfect comparison. Really, the differences would have been in tire size and width and height of the vehicle. However, we do have the 10-speed with a 2.7 liter EcoBoost engine in another model, and that's the Ford F-150. However, there we have a difference in weight. However, using a bit of math, we can look at the weight difference between the 2021 Ford Bronco and the 2020 or 2021 Ford F-150, and using that difference in weight with confirmed fuel economy numbers from the F-150, we will be able to figure out and have a really great idea of what kind of fuel economy we can expect from that 2.7 liter EcoBoost engine. And what's more is we also have a really good method of figuring out what kind of fuel economy we're going to get from the 2.3 liter 4-cylinder turbo engine that the Bronco is going to get, because it too, just like the current Ranger, is attached to a 10-speed transmission. And well, we have confirmed numbers on the Ranger for fuel economy. So in just a moment, we're going to figure that all out together. So let's start off with comparing fuel economy versus power specs between the Ford Ranger and the Jeep Wrangler. Now, the reason we're going to start with these two is because both of these have proven EPA fuel economy test results. But we need to figure out which Jeep Wrangler engine we're going to use for this comparison. Super easy with the Ford Ranger. It only has one engine, and that's the 2.3 liter EcoBoost with 10-speed transmission. That we're going to be getting in the standard engine for the Bronco. So when we look at the Jeep Wrangler, The Jeep Wrangler's engine that is most comparable to the 2.3 liter four-cylinder in the Ranger is actually their six-cylinder, because their six-cylinder, so that's Jeep's six-cylinder 3.6 liter engine, has 285 horsepower at 6,400 RPM and 260 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM. Now, this is comparable to the Ranger's engine, which is going to be used by the standard Bronco, because the Ranger's engine, the 2.3 liter four-cylinder 10-speed, it gets 270 horsepower at 5,500 RPM and 310 pound-feet of torque at 3,000 RPM. So to compare, we're getting 15 less horsepower than the Wrangler, but it's making that horsepower number at almost 1,000 RPM lower. So it makes it very usable horsepower. Also, Ford makes up for this lack of 15 horsepower in torque, as has 50 extra pound-feet of torque, and it's making that 50 extra pound-feet of torque at 1,000 RPM less. So you're getting more torque and you're getting it at less revolutions of the engine. So that makes it more usable torque. Having lower end torque is better for pulling, and it helps the vehicle really feel like it's got power behind that pedal. Now that we've established power specs between the Wrangler and the Ford Ranger, what we need to see is what effect does this have on fuel economy. Now, the Wrangler gets 18 miles per gallon in the city and 23 miles per gallon on the highway. That's using that 3.6 liter V6 engine. Now, when we compare that to the Ranger gets 20 miles per gallon in the city and 24 miles per gallon on the highway. Now that's a 10% difference in the city, but only 4.2% difference on the highway. In both cases, whether we're looking at city driving or highway driving, the Ford Ranger is more fuel efficient than the Jeep Wrangler 3.6 liter V6 engine. But this raises the important question: will the Bronco be as fuel efficient as the Ranger? I would argue that it will be very similar for certain model Broncos, because we are using the same motor, the same transmission, the same frame, and the weight is almost identical. Tire size, tread pattern, and ride height of the Bronco Sasquatch, Badlands, and Wild Track will decrease fuel economy, however. But covering those differences and what factors create those differences and why is going to be left for a different video, where I talk about fuel economy in those models, the Wild Track, the Badlands, or the Sasquatch package. And the reason I'm keeping that for another video is I don't want to overcomplicate or over-speculate our current goal of figuring out what kind of fuel economy we will get on a Bronco with standard tires. It's a lot easier comparing or speculating or trying to figure out what kind of fuel economy we're going to get on a Bronco when we're comparing that to a Ranger that has pretty much the same tires. So let's try to keep as many of the variables the same so we can get a really good idea of what kind of fuel economy we're going to get on the Bronco. And we're doing all this to help us figure out, this fuel economy is an important factor when purchasing a new vehicle. So we're doing all this to help us figure out, whether the Bronco is going to be the right vehicle for us, and to help us figure out if, we're going to buy it. Because if we do wait for EPA numbers on the Bronco, we're going to be waiting quite a while. We'll probably be in a position where Ford won't be making any more 2021 models, and we'll have to order 2022, and likely we'd be looking at a delivery of late 2021 or early 2022. So, To avoid that, to avoid having the 2021 models sold out and having our orders turn into 2022 models, we need to look at some math to figure this all out and find out about what kind of fuel economy we're going to get on the new Bronco. So back to the question of fuel economy on the new Bronco. So the standard Broncos, width, tire size, weight, and ride height are almost identical to a Ranger. So can we assume that fuel economy will be the same? Well, it has been pointed out in a previous video in the comments section that ratios play a big role, and that is incredibly true. What will help the Bronco is its GOAT mode, which stands for goes over any terrain. That will come standard on all models and come with an eco mode and a sport mode. Now, these two modes have the complete opposite effect on shift points and throttle response. And this, combined with the fact that the Bronco has a transmission with 10 speeds, should help diminish the effect that different gearing can have on fuel economy and also acceleration. So it is safe to assume that the new Bronco on 30.8-inch tires will be very similar in fuel consumption to a Ranger. We can expect then 20 miles per gallon in the city and 24 miles per gallon on the highway for the 2.3-liter turboed 4-cylinder engine with 10-speed transmission. Now, just to briefly address some of the hate that the Bronco has been getting for not being available with a V8 5-liter engine, I just want to address that quickly. And I know I say this often, but 4 cylinders should not be a bad word. At 270 horsepower, at relatively low RPM, and 310 pound-feet of torque at a very low RPM of 3,000 revolutions per minute, this engine is powerful. Just to put this in perspective, a lot of people are saying, I want a good old V8 in the upcoming Bronco. Well, let's talk about good old V8s. In 2005, a 5.7-liter Hemi produced 345 horsepower and 375 pound-feet of torque on a vehicle that weighed about 800 pounds more than a current Ranger or the upcoming Bronco. And 5 years earlier, in the year 2000, a 5.9-liter V8, so that's a huge engine, on the Ram produced 230 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque. So, this gives us just a little perspective on what technology has brought us, and also shows us that, a 4-cylinder is, historically speaking, a current 4-cylinder from Ford, this 2.3, is fantastic when we compared this to V8s that were being produced 15 or 20 years ago. So that's why I feel hating on the Bronco for not having a V8, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me when we're looking at performance. There is always, the good old sound of a V8, and you know what, that can't be beaten. Ford's 5-liter V8 sounds amazing. You can play around with the exhaust to really get a crazy great sound out of it. So, it would be cool if the Bronco had an amazing sounding V8, but I'm holding back judgment until I hear the 2.7-liter V6 twin turbo engine on the Bronco. And if I don't like the sound of that, well, I'm going to be very open to, hearing it with either a muffler change or changing the resonator underneath the vehicle. And I say this because my 2015 Mustang that I had, it was a GT 5-liter. The 2015s prior to 2018, the V8 for me personally didn't have enough sound, and changing the resonator has made a world of difference. And if you also change the mufflers on top of that, well, then you really get an aggressive sounding V8. Now, I'm hoping that the Bronco 2.7 liter EcoBoost engine is going to come with already a great sound, and there are some 6-cylinders on the market that sound amazing. If we think of Porsche 911s, they sound incredible. They're a 6-cylinder, so that's what I'm hoping for from Ford from factory. If not, I'd say change the resonator or change the mufflers, and we should have a great sounding vehicle. So as good as V8s are, good old V8s are not the only solution for power. The good old saying of there is no replacement for displacement is no longer completely true. With today's need for fuel economy, I think Ford has somewhat been forced to, pick the 2.7 liter V6 twin turbo EcoBoost engine as the optional Bronco engine and not a V8, because buyers are looking for fuel economy, and government restrictions and regulations are becoming more severe. So, they need to have a fuel efficient engine, and the 2.7 liter offers exactly that. Now, in the Bronco, that's going to give us 310 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque, which is more than the Edge ST that has power specs of 335 horsepower and 380 pound-feet of torque, matted to an 8-speed transmission. So, getting back to fuel economy, forgetting about V8s, figuring out the Bronco's 2.7 liter fuel economy is not as simple of a task as that of the 2.3 liter engine. While the F-150 has the same motor and tranny, it does not have the same weight unless we look at a regular cab 4x4 2.7 liter EcoBoost. But it does not have the same shape as an SUV. So I can't just use either the Edge or the F-150 as a guaranteed or, as a really very accurate guess at what kind of fuel economy we're going to get out of the Bronco 2.7 liter engine. So I'm going to use both. We're going to compare both fuel economy off the F-150 and fuel economy off the Edge to give us a really good idea of what kind of fuel economy we're going to get with the Bronco with the 2.7 liter 6-cylinder twin turboed engine. Also, the reason I'm not just using F-150 Super Crew 2.7 liter fuel consumption numbers is because the 4-door F-150 weighs 7.2% more than a Bronco. So there is no direct comparable like the 2.3 liter Bronco to the Ranger, but let's see if the math follows between engine models on the Edge and numbers and weights from the F-150 regular cab to Super Crew model. So to figure this out, we're going to be looking at all the various differences and see if the percentages between these models follows through to see if we can apply it on the Bronco. So let's get started. The Edge 2-liter engine gets 21 miles per gallon in the city, and the 2.7 liter gets 19 miles per gallon in the city. That's a difference of 9.5% for city driving. On the highway, the 2-liter gets 28 miles per gallon, and the 2.7 liter gets 26 miles per gallon for a difference of 7.2%. When we add that percentage to the Ranger's confirmed 2.3 liter EPA fuel economy rated numbers, we would get 1.9 miles per gallon less in the city for the 2.7 liter EcoBoost, making for 18 miles per gallon in the city. Because the Ranger has 20 miles per gallon, if we remove the percent difference that we found on the Edge, it works out to a difference of 1.9 miles per gallon. So 20 down to 18 miles per gallon for city driving for the Bronco's 2.7 liter. For highway driving, the Ranger gets 24 miles per gallon, and if we remove 7.2% efficiency from that 24 miles per gallon, we would get 2.2 miles per gallon less. So a rating of either 21 or 22 miles per gallon for the 2.7 liter Bronco. Now later I'm going to show why I think this is pretty accurate, and if by the end of this video you agree with me, this would make a difference of $750 over 5 years based on 15,000 miles per year, or $150 per year. With the engine option being about $1,700, hopefully all this will help you figure out which engine on the Bronco is right for you. Also, to help you choose between the two engines, I suggest that you watch my video on Bronco acceleration. However, I'm not willing to accept these numbers blindly, as this has been based on a percentage difference from the Edge going from a 2-liter engine to a 2.7-liter engine. So let's get more data and evidence to back up the numbers we have so far. So let's compare our speculated 18 miles per gallon city and 22 miles per gallon highway for the upcoming Bronco with what the F-150 regular cab 4x4 gets for fuel economy. This F-150 weighs about 120 pounds less than what Ford is saying a Bronco will weigh. So it's very similar with under 1% difference in weight. Same motor and transmission. So other than wind resistance, gear ratios, and height, we have a comparable model. In regards to wind resistance, the difference is caused by cab length and height. There is a difference of 5.3 inches with the F-150 regular cab 4x4 being higher than a standard Bronco, but that height difference cancels out with the Sasquatch package or Badlands or Wild Track models. That is positive news for fuel economy numbers for the Bronco. On a side note, for more info on Bronco dimensions versus an F-150, check out my Bronco dimensions video. Now back to the task at hand. The F-150 regular cab, that's the 3-seater, gets a proven government-tested 18 miles per gallon city and 23 miles per gallon highway. Now we can see that the results are very similar to that of the math we did in regards to the Edge motor versus the percentage difference that we applied on the Ranger. So with city driving, we arrive at the same results, but why a 1 or 2 mile per gallon difference for highway driving? That would be due to the 10-speed transmission. I expect that the Bronco 2.7 liter with 10 speed will arrive at 23 miles per gallon like the F-150 because of the 10th speed allowing for lower RPM highway coasting. And it's this 10th gear that makes it that, I can't solely rely on the Edge's numbers and the percentage difference that those two engines created and assume that that percentage difference can just, be applied to the Ranger for its engine difference. Furthermore, what this shows us is that gearing is very important. And to prove this, we need just to look at the 2020 Ford Explorer. It gets 20 miles per gallon in the city, which is the same as the Ranger, has the same engine, has the same transmission, but it gets 27 miles per gallon on the highway. So same city mile per gallon as a Ranger, but a 3 mile per gallon difference with highway driving. So, this goes to show that we can't just use the Edge's numbers and we can't just use the Explorer's numbers and just apply that either to the Ranger. That's because the Ranger is geared to pull more, it's geared for off-roading, and it has a higher ground clearance, which causes more aerodynamic drag or wind resistance. But in the end, this 1.5 mile per gallon average difference makes for about $100 a year at the pump. And as we see with the Explorer, EPA tested economy of 3 miles per gallon on average between a 2.3 liter 4-cylinder and a 3 liter 6-cylinder twin turbo per year makes a $200 difference. So at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself the question, what is more important, miles per gallon or smiles per gallon? In conclusion, the Bronco should hit EPA testing with a 2.3 liter engine at 20 miles per gallon city and 24 miles per gallon highway. That will get you 275 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque. With a 2.7 liter 6-cylinder twin turbo of 310 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque, I really expect 18 miles per gallon in the city and 23 miles per gallon on the highway, unless you get a Sasquatch package or the Badlands or Wild Track model. Now, when we compare it to the 6-cylinder engine on the Wrangler, getting 18 miles per gallon city and 23 miles per gallon on the highway, we have a slight advantage buying a 2.3 liter Bronco. However, considering their fuel economy numbers versus a 2.7 liter EcoBoost from Ford should be very similar, I'd say, as Ford has given us a huge reason to buy a Bronco. We can spend essentially the same amount at the pump, but with Ford charging only about 2,000 Canadian or about $1,700 US for the 2.7 liter EcoBoost, they have given us a major reason to buy a Bronco. 115 reasons when looking at torque differences and 45 reasons when looking at horsepower. Now, and that's because the Bronco is making, with a 2.7 liter EcoBoost engine, 45 extra horsepower and 115 pound-feet of torque more than the Jeep Wrangler's 3.6 liter V6 engine, and Ford really isn't charging much for this engine. Usually, automobile manufacturers charge a huge premium for this much extra power, as they only offer much more powerful engines on the highest trim models, but with, under $2,000 US for that very powerful engine, Ford is giving us a major reason to pick the Bronco. And all that extra power of the 2.7 liter isn't coming at the cost of fuel economy. We're not getting, I don't think we're going to get horrible fuel economy out of the 2.7 liter engine on the Bronco, because, on the F-150, we have very reasonable numbers. On the Ford Edge, the 2.7 liter makes fantastic numbers, getting 27 miles per gallon on the highway. So, thank you, Ford. I think that a lot of people are going to be buying up these Broncos. Ford has already reserved over 150,000 Broncos. So I'd say the real problem we're going to have is getting our hands on one if we want, a Bronco this year. So, hopefully this review of, speculated, but, hopefully, I really think the math does make sense. Hopefully, this speculation on fuel economy will help you pick the right Bronco and help you pick one while, there's still time. So you don't end up, waiting a full year and getting your Bronco in a year or more from now. If this video has been helpful, please like, and also please subscribe. I've got more Bronco videos on the way, and once I'm done with the Bronco, well, we'll be switching off to another model. So, next video should be coming out in a few days. Thank you for watching.